Abandoned on the holiday, I watched my family's perfect feast online, only to uncover the calculated $700,000 plot to steal my house. I didn't get angry. I got clear, rewriting my will to give everything to a women's shelter and unleashing a public karma storm that brought their carefully curated life to ruin. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The sweet potato pie was cooling on the counter, the smell thick with cinnamon and cloves. It was Thanksgiving morning, November 28th, 2024. This was my quiet, reliable role in the Carver family holiday. I baked the pie, and David, my son, picked me up precisely at 1 o'clock. I'd been doing this for 30 years. I stood by the window, adjusting the maroon cardigan that David always said brought out the gold in my skin, but the street outside was empty. The cold had crept into the house and settled in my bones. I tried to tell myself he was just busy. David was forgetful, distracted by his wife, Scarlett. She was always chasing some kind of polished perfection, and David was always chasing her approval. At 1:30, I poured out the coffee I had reheated. At 2, I walked to the phone, my hand shaking slightly, and called his cell. It rang twice. A sharp, clear sound in the silence, then cut straight to voicemail. I did not leave a message. I set the phone down, face up, on the mahogany side table. The silence of the house was suddenly loud, pressing against my eardrums. I fixed myself a small plate. Leftover greens, a slice of smoked turkey from the night before, and a scoop of macaroni. I lit a single pillar candle, a habit I couldn't break, and set it next to the untouched pie. Whispering grace, I tried to chew past the hard knot in my throat. Every bite tasted like dust. By 5 o'clock, the sun had vanished, taking with it all my pretense of calm. I had to know. I picked up my phone, my thumb heavy, and opened social media. That was the moment the floor dropped out from under me. The first photo was Scarlett, wide smile, arm wrapped around David. They stood in front of a sprawling mahogany table, every setting perfect, every detail curated. The turkey was a stunning golden monument in the center. The caption read, "So incredibly grateful for this beautiful life and our beautiful people. Family first. Jack's blessed." My stomach clenched, tightening painfully. I clicked the photo, heart hammering, trying to find a mistake, a sign I had simply missed the invitation. There was Chloe, my granddaughter, holding a sparkling cider glass, laughing with cousins I hadn't seen in months. There was David pouring wine into crystal glasses. And then I saw it, the dessert table. Resting proudly on a delicate porcelain stand, the same stand I'd bought Scarlett last Christmas, was a pie. But it was not my pie. It was a store-bought chocolate confection, glossy and unnatural. The message was unmistakable. I was not only excluded, but I was replaced. I scrolled through the comments, my vision blurring. Such a gorgeous spread. Where is Eleanor? Miss Ellie always makes the best pie. Scarlett had replied to dozens, thanking them, ignoring the questions about me. I noticed a faint blue hyperlink beneath the photo, a stray tag. Chloe had tagged me, accidentally, in the group. The private group. I clicked it, and the world narrowed. It wasn't just a party I missed. It was a conspiracy. My access, triggered by Chloe's error, opened up a thread titled The Thanksgiving Blackout. I saw the dates, 2 weeks earlier. The first message was from Scarlett. "Are we seriously inviting Eleanor again?" She slows down everything. "We need the space for the new caterer setup." David's response was immediate. "She's my mother, Scarlett." Scarlett shot back. "And I'm your wife. This is my vision. Tell her the dinner is canceled due to my stomach bug. She'll do her little prayer thing and stay home." And then, the final knife twist. David's reply. Not a protest, not a defense, just a single yellow thumbs up emoji. Lazy, silent, complicit. I did not cry. My breath hitched, a thin, rattling sound that scratched the back of my throat. I stood up, moved to the kitchen, and wrapped my sweet potato pie in foil. I slid it into the cold darkness of the refrigerator. I was alone, but I was not silent. My life's work, my role, my identity, all of it had been dismissed with a single emoji. My hand went back to the phone, not to reply, but to archive every word. The only thing they cared about was their vision. I would give them a vision they wouldn't forget. I stared at the photo of their perfect fake table. A new word, clear and cold, surfaced in my mind, overriding the pain. It was the first word I would use to change everything. I had finally seen the full text of the plan. A single, calculated word. I woke up slumped in the armchair, the phone resting on my lap like a brick. The candle had burned down to a greasy puddle. The air was heavy with cold disappointment. There were no calls, no texts, not even a flimsy "oops, sorry" emoji from Scarlett. They were waiting for the embarrassment to pass. They assumed I would fold into the familiar role of the quiet, forgiving mother. They assumed wrong. I opened the private group again. The thread was still active. I read every joke about my slow walk, every complaint about the scent of my dusty perfume, every dismissal of my life stories. Scarlett had written that she couldn't stand my antique energy, dragging down the value of her home. David had added a laughing face. But then I saw a message I had missed earlier, buried beneath the snide remarks. Scarlett, and remember, we need the house free and clear by the spring inspection. Her house sale alone covers the last $50,000 for the restaurant expansion. David, relax. The paperwork is simple. She's already designated it for us. She just needs to sign the final transfer agreement we leave out next month. She never reads the fine print. My jaw locked. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving dinner. It was about money. It was about the house I inherited from my grandmother, the house where David was born, the house I had worked 60 years to pay off. They were treating my home like collateral, my life like a balance sheet. The shame of exclusion vanished, replaced by a cold, hard rage that settled deep in my chest. They need the house free and clear. The house, my house, was their $50,000. I walked straight to the small, fire-rated safe hidden behind a painting in my bedroom. Inside, nestled beneath old photos, was a sealed envelope marked Christmas 2024. It contained the notarized copies of my current will, which left the house, the retirement accounts, and all my investment bonds to David and Chloe. I had planned to give them everything. I pulled the letter out, the paper crisp and official, feeling the weight of the betrayal in my fingertips. I didn't hesitate. I took the scissors from the desk and cut the envelope diagonally, slicing right through the signature line. The sound was a harsh, final tear in the silence. I pulled up the contact list on my phone. Atai Mira Chen, my probate lawyer and the daughter of my former neighbor, answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional. Eleanor, happy belated Thanksgiving. Is everything all right? No, Mira, I said, the words steady, a little too loud in the quiet room. I need to rewrite my will, all of it, tonight. A pause stretched across the line, heavy with unspoken questions. Tonight? It's Friday, and I'm with family, Eleanor. Can we schedule first thing Monday? It has to be tonight, I insisted, before David decides to stop by with the pie, trying to mend fences he never meant to keep. I need this done. Now. Mira was quiet for another moment, sensing the iron beneath my voice. Understood. I will be there at 8. Bring what you need. I know what I need, I replied. I need a new legacy. I hung up and looked at the scraps of the old will scattered on the desk. They thought I never read the fine print. They thought I was passive. They were about to learn that old women who appear quiet often have the sharpest eyes. The clock on my kitchen wall ticked loudly, measuring the 7 hours I had left before the door would open and the new truth would be signed into existence. I sat back down, waiting. This was not about revenge. This was about reclaiming my agency from the foundation of their greed. My blood still boiled, but my purpose was now surgical. The house was collateral, and they needed it gone by spring. Mira arrived precisely at 8, punctual and serious. She didn't offer apologies for the late hour. She simply placed her briefcase on the kitchen table and looked at the diagonal cut across the discarded envelope. "We don't need to discuss why," she said. "We just need to discuss who." I slid a small handwritten note across the table to her. On it was the name of the local nonprofit, the Cedar Rest Foundation. They provided housing and vocational training for displaced elderly women. I'd been making anonymous donations for years. The house, the accounts, the bonds, everything, I instructed. They get the whole estate immediately upon my passing. No family trust, no provisions. Mira looked at the paper, then back at me. "Eleanor, that's a considerable estate. It will change that foundation's future. But it also cuts out David entirely. Are you absolutely certain about the house? It's paid off, worth almost $700,000. It was paid off with my sweat, not his entitlement," I stated. "They valued it at $50,000 of renovation capital. I value it at the stability it will bring to women who truly need it." We worked quickly, meticulously, with my neighbor Eloise and a young postal worker acting as witnesses. They signed the document, the process compressed into 40 minutes of precise legal action. It was done. The new will, clean and final, rested in Mira's briefcase. I felt the familiar ache in my shoulders, but the cold weight in my chest had finally lifted. I had traded the soft, messy expectations of family for the hard, clean reality of a legal contract. Just as Mira was zipping up the case, my phone rang. "David." I glanced at Mira. She gave me a single hard nod. "Answer it." I took a breath and pressed the screen. "Ma?" "Thank God you picked up." David's voice was tight, rushed. "Look, I know the post looked bad. Scarlett's been crying all day. It was just a misunderstanding, a massive miscommunication. We love you. Can I swing by tomorrow morning with a proper apology?" "No, David," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. "I already had my Thanksgiving dinner. And my Christmas, too." "Ma, stop it. We're getting heat at work. People are talking. Just tell me you didn't, believe that awful nonsense from the group chat." "I didn't have to believe it, David. I read it." I paused, letting the words sink in. "You valued my house at $50,000 towards Scarlett's new catering contract. I saw the text." A heavy, absolute silence fell on the line. I heard him swallow. "You saw the private chat?" "Ma, that's private. That's illegal hacking." "It was an accident," I corrected him. "A leak. But the intention was real. And so was the consequence." I stood up, walked to the window, and watched the streetlights flicker. "I was going to leave you everything. The house, the accounts. I had it sealed. Now, I have signed everything over to the Cedar Rest Foundation. Tonight. You don't have a legacy here anymore. You made your choice by tapping a thumbs-up emoji." The line exploded. "You did what? Are you serious, Ma? That's insane. That's financial cruelty." "Cruelty," I echoed. "A harsh word for a thumbs up. Goodbye, David." I cut the call mid-shout. My hand was steady as I placed the phone back on the table. Mira, who had listened in silence, put a hand on my arm. That was clean, Eleanor, but he's going to fight the will. He'll claim duress or incapacity. Let him, I said, feeling a strange lightness. She shook her head. We need to move quickly on the house deed transfer. David has power of attorney over your financial decisions, something you signed last year, remember? It gives him leverage to stall the deed change until he can challenge the will. We have 24 hours to file the deed amendment before he tries to legally freeze the assets. My victory felt brittle, already under attack. I had anticipated rage, but not a legal mechanism to undermine my choice. David wasn't just my son. He was a silent, legal threat. David still held a signed piece of paper giving him control. The fight was no longer private. It was now a race against David's power of attorney signature. Mira and I spent the rest of the night prepping the house deed amendment, which would officially transfer the title to the foundation upon my death, effectively bypassing David's control and isolating the physical asset from the probate court. We filed electronically just before the clerk's office closed at 8 a.m. By noon, I was back in my quiet living room, the fight still burning hot and fast. I had the satisfaction of a done deal, but I needed to control the narrative before David released his inevitable damage control statement. He couldn't claim I was crazy if the world already knew he was a villain. I opened my social media, navigated to the public page where Scarlett's perfect Thanksgiving photo still sat, gathering likes and oblivious comments. I uploaded the receipts, the screenshots of the Thanksgiving blackout chat, the antique energy line, the 50,000 valuation, and finally the stark, quiet photo of my untouched plate and the single candle. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. I typed the post, the words sharp and precise, burning off 7 decades of deference. This was my Thanksgiving. I waited by the window. I baked the pie. I dressed up. No one came. I found out later the empty chair was calculated, part of a plan to secure my house for a business venture. You didn't forget me. You excluded me. I had planned to give my family the house, the savings, and the future. They chose instead to mock and discard me. I have updated the will. My legacy is no longer with those who see me as a burden, but with a community that sees me as a mother. I won't be in your photos, your dinners, or your legacy. Let the world see the difference. I hit post. It felt like tossing a grenade into their polished living room. The response was immediate. Within minutes, the notifications were a buzzing, chaotic storm. Cousins, old friends, and strangers started sharing the post, comparing it directly to Scarlett's family-first hypocrisy. Within the hour, the hashtag The Forgotten Grandma was trending locally. The scale of the public shame was overwhelming, fast, and completely outside David and Scarlett's carefully managed image. Scarlett was the first to react publicly. Her own post, just 40 minutes later, was a pathetic display of victimhood. My heart is breaking. This is a cruel, slanderous attack driven by a family member who is clearly suffering from cognitive distress. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time. She tried to turn the screw, but the world didn't buy it. Aunt Bernice, my late husband's sister, chimed in publicly beneath Scarlett's post. I'm ashamed. Eleanor is the most dignified woman I know. The chat logs are real. I raised David better than this. Stop lying, Scarlett. Then came the real threat, a physical artifact in the form of a legal notification sent to my email. It was a letter from Scarlett's lawyer, claiming that since I was clearly mentally unstable, as evidenced by the erratic nature of my online post, she was exercising a prior financial agreement I had signed, transferring control of a joint bank account that held a portion of my retirement savings, the amount of $1,250. She wasn't just fighting the house. She was trying to bleed me dry now, claiming the funds were necessary for temporary protective care. I felt my heart skip a beat. I had forgotten about that joint account, set up years ago for medical emergencies. The paper I had signed was now weaponized. The digital dagger was now a physical theft. I had to block the account before the $12,500 transfer cleared, but the bank was closed for the weekend, leaving me in a dangerous holding pattern. The bank was closed. It was a Saturday morning, and the $12,500 transfer, requested by Scarlett, hung in the ether, not yet cleared, but already claimed. I felt a cold surge of helplessness, the kind that reminded me exactly why I needed my agency back. I called Mira, spitting out the details. The joint account. She cited the emergency clause. She's taking the $12,500. We file an injunction on Monday morning. First thing, Mira advised, her voice tight. But until then, we need a social stabilizer. You need someone with unimpeachable standing to speak publicly for you. Just then, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It wasn't David. It was Chloe. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I know this is a mess. I miss you. Can I bring you tea? I stared at the message. A clean opening. I had to use this. I typed back, not with forgiveness, but with a calculated risk. You can come, but don't bring anything. Just tell me what your mother is truly fighting for. Chloe arrived 20 minutes later, eyes red, wearing a puffy coat that looked too big for her. She didn't look like the confident, laughing girl from the social media photo. She looked like a captive. She's scared, Grandma, Chloe whispered, twisting her hands in her lap. Not of you, of losing the house. She already secured a $700,000 bridge loan for the catering expansion using the promise of your house as collateral. If the house goes to the foundation, the loan is called in immediately. She'll lose the new business. My eyes widened. $700,000. Not $50,000. That was just the last hurdle. The full value of the house was already leveraged. This wasn't greed. This was desperation. Did your father know the full amount? I asked, my voice low and steady. Chloe hesitated, then nodded. He signed the guarantee. She told him you'd never checked the deed. I paid the price of that confession by placing a hand over hers, a small gesture of false comfort. Thank you for telling me the truth, Chloe. But you need to stay safe. Your mother is playing a dangerous game. Just as Chloe stood to leave, a shadow fell over the porch window. A hard, rhythmic knocking started. Not tentative, like a friendly visit, but demanding, like a debt collector. David. He was alone, his face pale and furious. He slammed his palm against the glass. Ma! Open this door. I know you have it. The deed. I saw the email from Mira. Where is the original? I pushed Chloe back toward the kitchen, my body a shield. Go out the back. Now. David was staring right at me, his eyes burning with an entitlement I had never seen before. He wasn't asking for an apology anymore. He was demanding property. He tried the handle. It was locked. He slammed his shoulder against the wood once, testing the strength of my front line. I need that original house deed, Eleanor, David hissed through the glass, his breath fogging the pain. Before Monday. I need to prove you're unfit to sign anything. I know where you keep the safe key. Give it to me now. He knew exactly where the key to the wall safe was hidden. David was pounding on the window, his face a mask of white fury and entitlement. I need that original house deed, Eleanor. I know where you keep the safe key. Give it to me now. He was not asking for forgiveness. He was demanding property, and the fact that he knew the hiding place for the safe key, under the loose brick near the rose bush, sent a spike of cold panic through me. I had shared that detail with him one quiet afternoon 20 years ago. A mother's fatal trust. I kept my back to the window, my body still shielding the spot where Chloe had fled through the kitchen door. My voice was low, cutting through the glass. You don't need the original deed, David. The electronic filing with the county clerk's office at 8 this morning is what matters. The house belongs to the foundation, not to your wife's debt. That stopped him cold. He recoiled slightly, the rage momentarily replaced by a deep, hollow fear. He knew the electronic filing was the true countermove to his power of attorney. He knew that piece of paper, the one he had leveraged for $700,000 in loans, was now worthless. But then, the rage reignited, focused on the immediate, achievable goal. He started kicking the oak front door, hard, rhythmic impacts that jarred the house and sent a tremor up my spine. I didn't move. I stood my ground, my pulse hammering against the bone in my wrist. Stop, David. You break that door, and I call the police. You want to call them? Fine, he roared. I'll call them myself. I'll tell them you're having a geriatric breakdown, threatening people, posting defamatory lies. They'll put you on a 72-hour hold, and I'll have access to everything. Where is the key, Ma? Where is it? He was bluffing, but the threat of the involuntary psychiatric hold, a cruel, common tactic against elders fighting for control, felt icy real. My hands, however, were steady. I knew he was close to forcing entry. I turned, not toward the phone, but toward the mantelpiece, grabbed a heavy brass candlestick, and placed it on the floor next to the table. I gave him a silent, visual warning. I will defend myself. Just as David raised his foot for another kick, a sharp, authoritative voice cut through the air. David! Stop it now! You get off her porch! It was Bernice, Aunt Bernice, my late husband's sister, the one who had publicly challenged Scarlett's lies. She was marching up the walkway, her coat flapping, holding her cell phone like a weapon. Behind her, 3 neighbors, the Millers and Mrs. Henderson, were standing on their own lawns, watching with undisguised disapproval. The social disgrace had gone public and immediate. David froze, eyes wide with horror, the rage dissolving into embarrassment. The crowd, even a small neighborhood crowd, was his kryptonite. Aunt Bernice, this is family business. Stay out of it. This stopped being family business when you left her alone on Thanksgiving. Bernice snapped, stepping closer, forcing him to take a step back. You break that door, David, and I'll call the police myself and file a civil complaint for harassment and destruction of property. You will lose your catering permit before you ever get that new business off the ground. David stood there, defeated by the weight of public opinion and the threat of professional ruin. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He glared at me, a look of pure hatred I'd never seen before, then spun on his heel and strode back to his car. The tires hissed on the asphalt as he sped away. The danger passed, leaving a silent, bitter chemical smell in the air. I opened the door and let Bernice in, my knees weak. You saved me, I whispered. No, Eleanor, she said, her voice tight. You saved me. I needed to be reminded what shame looks like. Now we move. While David was distracted by the front door, he was still acting under the power of attorney. He's already frozen your 2 smaller investment accounts. A new punch, swift and low. I checked my online banking on my laptop. 2 accounts, holding about USD 800 combined, were locked with a note. Security review. Not a massive loss, but a clear signal. David was going to harass me financially until I broke. We need a full financial audit before Monday morning's bank fight, I told Mira on the phone immediately after Bernice left. There has to be something they don't know about, something they missed. Mira agreed to search every corner of my financial history. I sat down at my desk, pulling out 60 years of tax returns, deeds, and insurance policies, running my hands over the rough paper. I saw the blurred dates and old account numbers. My sight was fading, but my memory was sharp. I was looking for the secret asset, the one thing that hadn't been linked to David's power of attorney, the one true lifeboat they had missed. I focused on a stack of dusty documents related to my late husband's life insurance. I pulled out a small, faded statement from 2008. Tucked inside the paper was a single laminated card. It wasn't an account number. It was a certificate of deposit, a CD, matured and automatically rolled over for the last 16 years, held under a special designation, Trustee, Eleanor Carver, for the Carver Memorial Scholarship Fund. The amount was large, far greater than the $1,250 they were trying to steal. It was the only thing standing between David's POA and my absolute financial freedom. The CD was untouched, sitting outside the POA's grasp, but the expiration date was tomorrow, Monday morning, 9 a.m. The expiration date was a tight, cruel deadline, Monday morning, 9 a.m. If the certificate of deposit matured without my intervention, the $600,000 would automatically roll into a low-interest savings account, the same type of account David already had control over via the POA. It was the ultimate micro clock, forcing a high-stakes frontal assault at the bank. I met Mira at the Riverbank branch precisely at 8:45 a.m. The air was cold and charged. We weren't there to open an account. We were there to neutralize a bomb. "We have two priorities," Mira confirmed as we walked toward the glass doors. "First, file the injunction to halt the $12,500 transfer from the joint account, citing the POA abuse. Second, cash out or transfer the $600,000 CD into a trust that cannot be accessed by David." The main branch was already busy. We took a number and sat in the waiting area. Then I saw them, David and Scarlett, sitting 3 rows away, tight-lipped and pale, staring straight ahead like they were waiting for a deposition. Scarlett was whispering urgently to David, who kept shaking his head, rubbing the knot in his tie. They had clearly anticipated my move against the joint account, but they couldn't have known about the CD. Our number was called. Mira led the way to the counter. David shot up, a decisive action born of panic. "Wait! I need to speak to the manager. This woman is mentally unstable. She's here to commit fraud." The bank representative, a young woman named Leah, looked startled. Mira stepped forward immediately, placing her briefcase on the counter. "We are here for a time-sensitive transaction. This is Eleanor Carver, account holder. I am her legal counsel, Mira Chen. This gentleman, David Carver, is acting under a revoked power of attorney. We have the filing stamp from the county clerk's office." David lunged for the counter, thrusting a laminated POA card in Leah's face. "The power of attorney is active. She's trying to liquidate assets for a fringe charity. I'm protecting her finances." The manager, a tall man in a navy suit, appeared. This was the confrontation I had prepared for. "We have a dispute," the manager stated, looking between the POA card and the county clerk's stamp Mira held. "We need to verify capacity." Before Mira could object, I leaned forward, my voice cutting and clear. "Mr. David Carver," I said, addressing my son, not the manager. "In your private group chat, you valued my house at $50,000 toward your wife's catering business, and you called my legacy antique energy. You've already tried to steal $12,500 from my emergency funds. If I am mentally unfit, why did you spend yesterday trying to smash down my front door to steal the deed?" The quiet in the bank was instantaneous and absolute. David's face went crimson. He looked around wildly, realizing the room was full of witnesses, not just bank personnel. I have the screenshots, I continued, holding up my phone, displaying the private chat logs. And I have a witness who saw you attempting forced entry. The manager, recognizing a disaster, made a quick decision. Ms. Carver, we will hold the $12,500 transfer pending a court order. Mr. Carver, your power of attorney is currently under review for abuse. Please step away from the counter. David sputtered, but he was neutralized. Mira quickly presented the CD certificate. We had won the battle for the money. The CD was successfully transferred into an irrevocable trust for the foundation. We walked out of the bank with our purpose achieved, leaving David and Scarlett in the lobby, two statues of defeat. But the victory was only partial. When I returned home, I found a formal eviction notice tacked to my front door. It wasn't from the bank or the court. It was from the Homeowners Association, HOA, citing the very deed I had filed. The electronic filing was valid, but the foundation's intended use, as a residential facility, violated a specific clause in the deed restricting the property to single-family, non-commercial use. David, desperate, had used the HOA's rules against me. The date was absolute. I had 30 days to vacate the premises before the HOA would begin legal action to seize the property and sell it at public auction. My house, my safe haven, now had a clock counting down to 0. The house was safe from David, but now the HOA was forcing me out with a 30-day deadline. The eviction notice was precise. Cold text taped to the one place I thought I was safe. 30 days. The absurdity of being evicted from my own paid-off home, not by a debt collector, but by the Homeowners Association, funded by a desperate son, was the ultimate escalation. The house was saved for the foundation, but I was suddenly homeless. I called Carla, the director of the Cedar Rest Foundation. I didn't hide the truth. The house is yours, but I have to leave in 30 days. David used the deed's commercial use restriction against the shelter's plans. Carla was silent for a moment. Then she laughed. A deep, cleansing sound. It doesn't matter, Eleanor. The house's value is what we needed. We will fight the HOA, and we will win. But not on your clock. We have a temporary unit ready. You are welcome here. Immediately. The next morning, I packed 3 boxes, my Bible, my mother's recipe cards, and the maroon cardigan. I walked out of the house I had owned for 60 years, locked the door, and left the key on the porch swing. It was the final, devastating walk of my life. My arrival at the foundation was quiet. I wasn't a hero. I was simply Eleanor, an elderly woman needing a room. I didn't know the names of the women who greeted me, but I knew their stories. Women discarded, women forgotten, women who were not trash. The silence in my small, sunlit room was the first peaceful quiet I had experienced in days. The public storm outside, however, reached a fever pitch. My move to the shelter, quickly leaked by Bernice, became a national story. The hashtag #NowForgottenGrandma wasn't just trending, it was a movement. The consequence engine turned financial. A major corporate client, reading the social media storm and Scarlett's disastrous public comments, pulled their $200,000 catering contract from Scarlett's business. David's phone logs, full of urgent unanswered calls, showed he was in free fall. The $700,000 bridge loan was called in. Their whole catering empire, built on the lie of my quiet compliance, collapsed in less than a week. David arrived at the foundation's community hall that evening, unannounced, uninvited, his expensive suit looking crumpled, his face drawn. He looked 20 years older than the man pouring wine in the Thanksgiving photo. He cornered me near the bookshelf. "Ma, please. We are ruined. The business is gone. Scarlett is threatening divorce. I can fix this. Sign this new document." He shoved a folded paper into my hand. It was an agreement, drawn up quickly by his lawyer, offering to legally surrender the power of attorney, publicly apologize, and sign over his stake in the joint account if I would simply void the house transfer to the foundation. He was trading the last scraps of his leverage for the $700,000 collateral. I looked at the paper, then at the man I had raised. "You want me to sacrifice my new family for your old debt," I stated, my voice flat. "They're a charity, Ma. They're strangers. We are your blood. You owe us this," he pleaded, his voice breaking. I closed my fingers around the paper, tearing it in half slowly. The sound was like dry leaves crumbling. "I owed you loyalty, David. You cashed it out for a thumbs up emoji. My debt is paid. The house belongs to the women who know what abandonment feels like. I'm not leaving them." I walked away from him, toward my room, leaving him standing there amidst the laughter of women preparing a communal dinner. I heard him exhale, a harsh, defeated sound, and then the door clicked shut behind him. The last time he would ever ask me for anything. 30 minutes later, the air outside the foundation grew quiet, replaced by the low, familiar thrum of a vehicle pulling up. I looked out the window of the Ruth room. A black and white sedan was idling by the curb. Two figures wearing the dark, structured uniforms of the local police stepped out, walking toward the front door. They had finally found me. The sound of the buzzer at the front desk of the foundation was sharp, definitive. The police were here. My heart hammered, not with fear, but with a weary expectation of the final confrontation. I stood in the doorway of the Ruth room, waiting. Carla, her expression calm, walked back from the desk with a small piece of paper. "It's a welfare check, Eleanor. Aunt Bernice called them. She said she couldn't reach you and was worried David had tried something reckless after the bank." I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Not an arrest, not an eviction, but an act of protection. Bernice, the loyal friend, had ensured my safety even from a distance. The police left, satisfied that I was safe and of sound mind, and the community hall settled back into its easy hum. The final legal action took place not in a courthouse, but in a sterile mediation room at Mira's office a week later. It was a procedural scene, a legal montage of consequence. David and Scarlett sat across the table, silent, flanked by their corporate lawyer. Montage. Mira filed the final motions, securing the foundation's ownership of the house, bypassing the HOA's objections with a legal exemption. Scarlett's lawyer presented the final balance sheet for the catering business. Debt remaining after the corporate contract pull was $32,000. The amount was staggering. David, staring at the table, formally signed the documents permanently revoking his power of attorney, removing every last thread of his control. I signed the affidavit, confirming I was of sound mind when I established the new will and trust, preempting any future challenges. The process was over in an hour. No yelling, no theatrics. Just the quiet administration of consequences. David and Scarlett stood up, not looking at me. They had lost the $700,000 collateral, the $200,000 contract, the $12,500 emergency funds, and the entirety of my estate. Their life, their polished, curated vision, was financially ruined. They walked out, shoulder to shoulder, but the gap between them was vast and echoing. I watched them go, not with triumph, but with a profound, bone-deep sense of completion. I had sought justice, but I found freedom. My quietness was no longer a sign of passivity, but a shield of earned peace. I spent Christmas at the foundation that year. We had a small, warm dinner in the community hall. I brought my sweet potato pie. This time, it was eaten, every last slice, by women who knew the difference between hospitality and obligation. I sat beside a woman named Rita, who shared her story of abandonment, and we raised our mugs of cider in a silent, shared toast. When I returned to my room later, a single card was slipped under the door. It had no return address, but I recognized the elegant, looping handwriting instantly. Chloe. She didn't beg for money or forgiveness. She simply wrote, Grandma, I'm working at a coffee shop now. I left. I don't miss the vision. I miss the kitchen. I know it's too late for tea in the old house, but I understand the boundary. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. You didn't just save yourself, you saved me too. I folded the letter slowly and placed it in my Bible. The tie to my blood was not severed, just redefined. Redemption wasn't mine to grant, but hope, I realized, was a gift to be received. I walked to the window of the Ruth room, my room, and looked out at the late December sky. The quiet was mine now, chosen and owned. I was no longer waiting by the window for a car that would never come. I was simply here, ready. I had traded the burden of obligation for the lightness of being seen. Let them scroll through their hollow memories. I was finally, beautifully, done looking backward. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here,